am going to relapse. And I went out and I started drinking again, like hardcore. And this girl in the chat was like, so it sounds like you're blaming the group because you went out. And I was like, so it sounds like you're in a cult and you should get the out of the chat right now.
Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more. All to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. Our guest today is Ashley Love Richards, and Ashley is the host of the podcast That's So Fucked Up, where she covers true crime, primarily cults, but also other types of crimes and murders. And she also serves on the board of directors of the nonprofit Tears of Eden, not to be confused with True Eden, dedicated to helping survivors of spiritual abuse. And first of all, welcome. Thank you for coming on. And we met a few months back, or a month, maybe, God, when was that now? The holidays. Several weeks back.
Couple months, yeah.
Yes. I was listening to an episode of your podcast and you were playing reality TV cult bingo. And I was like, I got to reach out, see if we want to chat.
I know. I was so excited too, because I'm really passionate about showing how many groups or organizations, you know, that are very much in the public eye are actually so culty. And, you know, culty can be good, you know, like my podcast is pretty culty. If you join our Discord, like,
I got to join that too. I forgot about that.
You need to. It gets a little wild, and like sometimes I get authoritarian, and no, I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. But like me, and I have like a team that I work with that I'm super close knit with, that I'm super lucky to have, because I couldn't do all of this alone. And we went to Florida in October for a little team retreat. There's like half a dozen of us. And we were going to get matching tattoos, but we didn't have time. And I was like, yeah, that's not culty at all. I mean, they were going to be little ghost tattoos. It wasn't going to like say the name of the podcast or anything, but that's one of the squares in cult bingo, like matching hair or clothes or tattoos.
I remember when we played with me on your show, we almost got a coverall. We had to like, we would have won that coverall bingo game for sure.
Yeah, we hit almost all of the 24 squares. It was crazy.
It's crazy. So my favorite question to ask everybody knows, you know, too, when you were growing up, young kid, teenager, moving forward, I'm imagining you didn't know you'd be a podcast host discussing true crime and cults. So what did you want to be growing up? How'd that change and get you to where you are now?
Real quick, before I forget, I want to touch on, I'm not on their board or anything, but I do work a lot with an organization called Unsilenced, and they are advocates to create awareness and help survivors of the troubled teen industry. Do you know what that is? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. What's the troubled teen industry?
Paris Hilton went to like 4 different.
Okay. Yeah.
It's funny because that's what I usually say, because that's what
it clicks.
90% of people it clicks for. Yeah. So the troubled teen industry, it's really fucked up. Dr. Phil sends kids there. I mean, it's like absolutely sanctioned child torture and abuse. It's totally an unregulated industry. Kids are dying in these places. It's really fucked.
I didn't know it was that bad.
Oh, it's so bad. And it's very, very, very cult-like, very coercive. They're very manipulative of the parents and the children. It's really sad. So I do a lot of work with Unsilenced as well.
And is that survivors of the troubled teen?
Yeah. Meg Applegate is the founder, and she is a survivor of the troubled teen industry. She was kidnapped in the middle of the night by 2 big men. And
wait,
actually, we were talking about fighting trolls earlier before we hit record. And I said that I'll get triggered when people are being mean to people that I love. So Meg made a video where she stitched a video that this girl had, I guess it went viral, about some girl saying how much she hated store bought pesto. And
Wait a
so
minute, I saw that.
okay, yeah, I never saw it, but yeah, apparently it went viral, right? It's this girl
Yeah,
being like, "Okay, I know this is crazy, but I just don't like store-bought pesto,"
I
right?
definitely saw that because it got me thinking. I'm like, I don't think I've ever like had store-bought pesto. I love making my own pesto.
What?
I
That's
remember that
I
like
don't
getting me think
cook at
anyway.
all. That's cool. That's cool that you do
I
that.
do. I enjoy cooking. I do.
I hate it. Um, and she did a stitch with it. Sorry, I just wanted to clear my throat, but not in your ear. She did a stitch with it where the girl says the thing and she goes, "Yeah, God, man, I hate store-bought pesto. It's kind of like that time that I got kidnapped in the middle of the night by two really big men and my
Oh
parents
my
were
gosh.
watching and they said, 'We're not abandoning you.' And I was like, I feel like you are." And so somebody was like, "Why are you trauma dumping on Instagram or something?" And I was like, "I will wreck your
Oh
life."
my God. Like that's fun. I felt guilty chuckling because I
No, she
realized
was
how
being funny,
right.
and she doesn't like give in to that shit. She doesn't like fight with people like I do.
Well, it's like we were saying before. Sometimes you just get in you you get in the like wrong person at the wrong time, and then you're just like, you know what? You're getting it.
Well, just like don't be I think one of the things that makes me most angry in this world is how people really victim blame trauma survivors. They're like, "You're
100%.
trash," but perpetrators, they're like, "You're so cool." And I don't know why anybody would talk shit. They're so crazy.
You know what I
And
think it is?
it's a widespread pattern that like people
Oh,
like
totally.
bad people better than they like good people. It's really weird.
It is. And you know what I think it is? I think it's two things, really. One of them is I think it's that, you know, like your shadow self, right? Like you look at someone and people that you like or people that you don't like, it's like a piece of you that you see in them or you don't see in yourself.
Ooh,
And so
stop
you're,
it.
yeah, you're
Deep.
very much like, it's like the people, I know there's people that troll me for certain things, and it's actually clearly a reflection on them and they're projecting that onto me, which is what I think the internet gives a lot of people freedom to do that.
Mm.
Not even
Hmm.
not just the freedom, but like the mask to do it, right? Because they don't have to look you in the eye, and
Oh
they're
yeah, I
they're
always trip
typically
about people say the wildest things online.
oh, it's nuts.
It's like,
You
would you
like
say that to somebody in person? And
right?
sometimes I actually question if I would. I'm like, probably not, girl. Like, you should calm yourself.
See, that's a thing. I think I would like if I can be I'm very sarcastic, and I like know how to cut people, not literally, but figuratively, and it's hard for me to like not do it. It's a learned skill. It's a lot of therapy. It's a learned
I
skill.
love that you're admitting that because I also recently said that like my toxic trait is that like I have a pretty good understanding of psychology just because I've been really interested in it because I've had a fucked up brain my whole life. So I've always like I don't want to be other people's therapists or anything because I would be
Hmm.
so annoyed and impatient at like I could not handle it. Um like I have this one thing that my therapist keeps recommending and I'm like, "No, for sure." And then the problem comes up again. She's like, "You should do that thing I recommended." I'm like, "I know, right?" And then it comes up again and I'm like, I would be my nightmare in this situation. I'd be like, "Bitch, I told you what to do."
Oh my
But
God,
I
I know.
have learned I've tried to learn a lot of psychology to like understand myself and the world better. And like I know what makes me feel really small, so I will like use that on other
Oh,
people sometimes to
totally.
like, oh, you know what? Like, yeah, no, I'm with you. I
Well,
will be
it
like
doesn't, we're not endorsing
jugular.
it. We're just saying it's
No.
self-awareness to know sometimes we can be mean. And I think too,
Well,
like
I feel
the
like
other,
I feel like we're both kind of in response though to like other people being mean.
yes, it's like fighting fire with fire.
Yeah, which is apparently not a great technique
Yeah,
according to my therapist, but
mine too.
she says strike when the iron is cold. How about that? You like that?
That's a good one. That's
That's
actually
good,
a really
right?
good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes I have to go take a little time out to myself and
Well,
breathe.
that's the thing. I always stop myself now and I'm like, why am I feeling like this? Is this about me or is this about them or is this about something else? And that's what I try to like kind of in a nutshell run through. But sometimes I'm like, this is about me. I'm in a bad mood and you just barked up the wrong tree.
Yep. Yep. I love therapy. I love mental health, and I'm so glad to talk openly about it. I do remember that you asked me a question, so I want to get back to that. The question was, what did I want to be when I grow up? So it's kind of funny because I always said I wanted to be a model, a singer, a dancer, and an actress. Like, the what's a trifecta with four? A quad
Quadfecta.
quadruple quadruple
Quad
threat. I don't know,
quadruple threat. Let's
but
go with that.
I still love dancing. I still love singing. I don't do either of them in a professional capacity whatsoever. They're just for um, the good of my heart. I used to take ballet, but actually, I was taking it at a time when some pretty gnarly stuff went down, and I haven't
Mm,
been able to do ballet since, which has been a bummer because I love ballet because I'm a very, very clumsy person in life. And ballet is one of the only times in life I've ever felt graceful. So I'd love to get back to that one day. But I do
is it a mental thing for you or is there something physical?
like no, my mental stuff is so physical. I
Okay.
feel that I'm actually a super physically healthy person. I just have a lot of it's usually stomach issues that get to me, but just
Yeah.
like aches and pains and whatever, because my stress often manifests really
Physical.
physically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can
So
understand that.
I do try to, like I'm going to a concert tonight. Actually, I'm super excited. Do you know Queen Herbie?
I do because you told me all about her and sent me some songs.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, obviously I love Queen Herbie. Shout out. And
And I'm going to therapy tonight, so.
hell yeah. I went yesterday. And I'm going tomorrow because my therapist had the audacity to take 2.5 weeks off for, I don't know, the holidays or something. Wow, No,
Do they
just
not
kidding.
know if they don't work, they don't get paid?
Like, hello,
Just kidding.
I'm going crazy. No, I was fine. But yeah, so I still love to sing and dance, just around my house or at a concert. Like I love to go to a concert and just like dance really hard and sing along. It's like a really great release of energy for me. Um, Modeling, no, I became really camera phobic at some point in my 20s. Like, um,
Did you try it at all?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, got myself into some pretty sketchy situations when I was like 18. Oh my God. Ashley.
Jeez.
Yeah, you guys like just stay away from Craigslist, okay?
Oh
Especially when
my
you're
goodness.
18. Like you don't know what's going on. Just chill. You can't make listen, I don't think anybody should be making major life decisions. I mean, not that like modeling is, but I don't know. I have a really
It's
weird
like
thing about
going down a very
no, I know.
prescriptive path.
I have a crazy weird thing about like age of consent because I've just with the with the work that I do, the stuff I'm passionate about looking into, I see a lot of like coercive control and grooming and stuff. So I get really sensitive about it's like, oh well, they're 18. I'm like, but who the fuck like knows what they're doing at 18? And I got
Right.
into a debate with somebody. They're like, well, what should the age of consent be? And I was like, I'm 25. I don't I don't
Well,
know.
that's actually an interesting conversation. I did not see this coming up. I think a lot about not just the age of consent, but when someone can give consent, right? And I think about it obviously from like the reality TV perspective and all the crazy shit that I've been hearing, especially the last few weeks. I don't know what happened with the new year, but all hell's kind of been breaking loose. And it's the
Wait,
stuff
what?
I hear. I'm
You're
like,
gonna have to maybe
how?
tell me later because I don't know what's going
Oh,
on.
I mean, just like the last couple months, there's several lawsuits going on. There's like sexual assault allegations. I mean, it's wild right now. There's people that are getting sued, suing, countersuing. It's just been a wild couple of weeks. And
Whoa. We should
yeah,
do an episode on my podcast about this because this is so fucked up.
it's so fucked up. But like the thing is like, can you? And this is what we have. We have a psychologist and couples counselor on our board at the UCAN Foundation, and she talks about consent all the time. She's like, if you're drinking all day, can you really consent? Can you really give
Mm-mm.
consent to these like 30-page contracts when you don't know
No,
what you're consenting to? Like
I
all
don't
of
think
this
so.
stuff, and it's wild. And you think about you put age into it, and like 25, if someone's groomed their whole life, can they really give consent at 25? Like
No,
there, it's
that
not an age thing, but I don't know what the other
yeah,
solution would be.
no, I know, and that's where it just like becomes a slippery slope where I'm like, can people just not become total fucking douchebag predators when they get power? Because it
Yeah.
generally seems to happen, or at least that's where I hear about it happening the most, is like with this garbage. But
Well, that's
um
what I was going to say earlier too, when you were talking about like people like cherish and praise the bad people, and then the victims get blamed. And I think it's because the people that are the bad people, they don't have the conscience to do the right thing, so they just double down on the bad thing, and they've got the power, so they have the ability to like out scream, I guess, or out yell the victims. And then people look at the victims and they see this, this daddy figure or whatever, and they just want to follow that because that person has power, or that person has
mhm.
clout, or whatever that is. And then that leaves the victims to just get victim blamed and never be able to give their voice, have their voice.
Yeah, and this is like
So much
just one
power
of the
dynamic.
thing this is one of the things in the world that just like makes me want to like scream at the top of my lungs and just go like rage at the world, but that's not super productive. So I'm trying to like channel that into productivity and like telling people about this shit. Um
Do you,
one
when
of
you
the
tell people about this, like, I obviously like you have your show, which I want you to, I want to talk a little bit about how you started your show and all that stuff too. But do you get like pushback from people? Because I'm like, I feel like in 30, 40 years, I'm gonna be that crazy old dude from the like Armageddon movie that's like, there's an asteroid coming to hit Earth, and everyone's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And I'm gonna be like, no, 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 like this is really, really scary. And my a lot of my friends and stuff are just like, okay, like no, horrible things are going on in the world
okay, you
right around us.
oh
And I feel like
dude,
I'm going
yes.
crazy sometimes because people just don't want to deal with it. So when you bring up a conversation with people in your life about consent, like do they even want to, are they even open to talking
Oh,
about it, or do
dude,
they
I
just want
mean,
to take the
sometimes
ignorance as bliss?
sometimes I am not who you want to get into a chat with at a party because I will
Same.
start talking about elite pedophile rings.
Same here.
Nick, you and I are
Okay,
going to be
no,
like
this
fucking
is,
if we're not hanging out,
we're
I'll
gonna
be
get
a
the like
hologram
conspiracy
status at
theorists.
your house and we're going to be like,
Right.
dude, wake up, sheeple. Like, I mean, obviously Skynet's already here and I could go on about that all day. No, I think people kind of do. Um, Often ignorance is bliss,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It is. And it's so funny because I feel like it's also, so I don't ever need to be told that I was right. I would like to be sometimes, but I don't ever need to be told that I was right about stuff.
Because you
But
know.
because I know, and I know they know, and my favorite I told you so is the one that I don't have to say.
Yeah, you're
So
like,
that's like,
mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's just like it's funny because like even I remember like back in 2016. So I'm super into politics, right? Back in 2016, I was like I was working for Bernie's campaign. I was big Bernie bro.
I love
And
Bernie.
well, me too, but he's on my shit list now. But I
Oh,
was telling
okay.
people, I'm like, hey, like I follow this really closely. My family's working class. I know why they support Trump. And they wouldn't have always supported a Republican, but they like him because what he says about jobs, and they've all lost their manufacturing jobs over the last 30 years, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I know the Midwest, like my family and stuff, and everything that we've been through, and the job insecurity. And like my uncle probably lost his job 5 times when I was growing up because he was in tool and die manufacturing, and they would just China, Mexico, wherever. And I was telling people, I'm like, guys, I think Trump can win this thing. Like, I think we're all kind of sleepwalking into this, thinking, oh, Hillary's resume and this and that, and she's a woman. And I'm like, I don't really think that's the sentiment of like all of America. It's a very
Yeah.
kind of elitist, and people were mad at me after he won. Like I did it. I'm like, I didn't vote for him. I didn't support him. And I was just like, hey guys, I feel like this guy can win. And I'm doing the same thing now because I think he's going to win. I don't
Dude,
support him, but I think he's going to win. And I'm like, saying this, and people are like, no, no, there's no way. I'm like, the guy railroaded and steamrolled the first primary
he
yesterday.
just also he just won something in Iowa
Yeah,
or
the first primary, the
like
caucus,
by a
landslide.
landslide.
Yep.
And I don't know if you've heard anything he said recently, but one thing I heard him say was, you put water on the magnet and the magnet's done. And I was like, he is not talking even any sense. Like that doesn't, because that's not true. Magnets can be, it's fine. I was like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? No, but actually me and my boyfriend, luckily he's from Denmark, and I don't have
Love Denmark.
citizenship or anything, but I can go for, chunks at a time with him. And we're thinking about probably maybe leaving around election time.
Mark.
Cause like, I'm not even kidding. We're kind of afraid that I don't want to go too crazy down the politics train, but I think that Trump will become a dictator. He'll take down democracy, and it could become very dangerous here.
So oh man, we should do an episode on this, dude. But I don't think he's gonna be a dictator for a couple reasons. One, he's really not smart enough because he had the chance on January 6th. If he would have made like, and I remember I went to the grocery store because I'm like, this is insane that this is happening. And also like I think that's all totally overblown. Like nobody had guns, the police let people in. It was a very weird situation. But like if he had just moved a couple like yes men generals around, dispersed the military in the country. He could have been a dictator. If he really wanted to be, he
I
could
think
have
he
been.
would,
And I
though.
just don't think
Now,
he's that smart. So I think there's definitely
I think he
tendencies to
tricks
it.
you by making you think he's. I
Well,
don't
he's
think he's that smart
he's
either, but I don't know. He
he's
pulls shit off
super
somehow.
smart at marketing. He's very smart at marketing.
Like he
But
knows
I
how to
don't
say
even
what
think
the people want to hear.
yes, exactly.
He's
And he
very good
doesn't
at that.
follow through on 99% of it.
No,
And then he does like 10% horrible things that he didn't mention at all that he was going to do.
we're really good at saying things that a lot of people don't want to hear. And he's really good at saying stuff that a lot of
100%.
people do want to hear.
100%. I had people trying to get me to run for office in Chicago, and I'm like, once people like talk to me,
Ugh.
I'm a nuanced person. I'm very like I'm not left, I'm not right. I mean I'm left, but I'm not
That would
like
be such a
Democrat or Republican.
icky
I
world
don't.
to be in,
Oh
too.
yeah.
The people that you would be rubbing elbows with all the time, just like,
Oh, I have no
no,
interest
thank
in
you.
that. Yeah.
Actually, that's funny because that brings me back round perfectly. So I was like, okay, model, singer, dancer, actress. And then I went to school and got my AA in film acting and voice performance.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
I thank you. I had this whole plan to move to LA and like pursue acting and stuff. And one thing that was always an issue, like something that I was trying to work on, was being less expressive in my face, because on camera your expressions like are a lot more emphasized. You probably
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
So my teacher would be like, do less, do so much less with your face, do more with like your eyes and stuff. And I was like, because I have giant, oh, people couldn't see that. I just made like a weird tweak out face because I don't
Some people
like,
on YouTube might have seen it. It was pretty
yeah,
funny.
like my face says so many things, and for the longest time I didn't like being on camera because I was like, maybe that like traumatized me. I was like, oh, my face, it does so many
Oh,
things and
totally.
I don't like that. And then I met a boy from Australia, and then I decided not to move to LA and went to Australia with him instead. Also, I was like deeply alcoholic till I was 27, and I still could like never have a drink again, but I have been for the most part sober for 9 years. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you mind me asking a question about? Well, finish what you were going to
No.
say.
Oh, uh oh yeah, so also I was just kind of like, I had the foresight to know that I probably would not fare well in Hollywood because of
Mm,
the amount of socializing you have to do that includes drinking, and then you have to like it's just like, and then a lot of people like party and do blow, and then you have to like go to casting calls the next morning, and I just like never, I just knew that like I knew enough that like I could not go to a party to meet directors and have two
mm,
cocktails. That wasn't my jam. If Ashley was
right.
drinking a cocktail, she was drinking 10 cocktails,
10
you know?
cocktails, yeah.
So I was like, I'm not like, I can't pull that off, dude. Also, I thought, you're awesome, but I thought a lot of the people in LA are really icky and vain.
Oh,
And
totally.
I just don't really want to be around that. So
I'm from Chicago and
you're
live in
like, I just
Chicago.
live here. Oh, wait, you
Yeah.
don't live in LA? Why did I think you
No,
lived in LA?
I don't know. No, I'm in
That's
Chicago.
weird.
We are
I just
currently
like
sitting at,
everybody who's ever been on TV even one time definitely lives in LA. That's in my
oh,
mind how it
a lot
how
of
it
them do, and a
works.
lot of people move there. People would ask me all the time, when are you moving to LA? I'm like, I'm not. I don't really have any desire to live in LA.
No, I
I'll
don't.
visit, but
I
I don't
do
need to
like
live.
visiting actually. There's cool stuff to do and stuff to visit, but yeah, I lived in Southern California for 10 years and it was
SoCal.
like really not my jam. So, yeah, I went to school and I got my degree for that, and then I fucked off to Australia instead, and then like ended up in rehab for a
Oh
few
my
years off and
gosh.
on. Yeah,
I
it
didn't know that.
took me a while to like really get it. Yeah, so a lot of my experience had been in working with people with intellectual disabilities or children, and then mostly or retail, and then the service industry. Like I spent a
Mm.
lot of time hostessing, waitressing, bartending, all that. And when I
And
got
this was
sober,
after you were, oh, I was going to say, when you were sober, were you still doing that?
no, because I was
Okay.
like, I can't deal with people. I fucking hate them. They're the worst. And I will drink if I have to be around them. So
Understandable.
I got a job delivering. One of them was delivering food, and the other one was I was a janitor at
Oh
the,
my gosh.
I know it's so funny. There was, so where the post office was, they also had the um like the vehicle maintenance facility where they would work on
Right.
the post office stuff. So I got a job as a janitor there, and I would go like 5 days a week for 3 hours in the afternoon, and just like, you know, I mostly cleaned the office upstairs where the people worked, because I wasn't like cleaning a fucking
Right, right.
mechanics whatever. I was mostly cleaning upstairs. So I would just listen to, I got really tired of music quickly. I was like, I need people talking in my ear to replace my thoughts.
Yep.
So then I got into audiobooks, and those got expensive. And then I started listening to podcasts. And I had always wanted to obviously entertain the world somehow. And I
Hmm.
thought that um or I wanted to like be an entertainer because that's what I enjoyed, and I also wanted to help people because I felt really passionately about that. And when I was really inspired by My Favorite Murder. They're a true crime comedy podcast. They're like basically one of the total OGs, and they talked about true crime with like a humorous spin, and not
Hmm.
in a disrespectful way at all, in just a way that made it more digestible. And then they were really open with their mental health too. And as somebody who was really struggling with loneliness and being in my head a lot and a lot of my own mental health issues and being somebody who really appreciates dark humor because I've used laughter as a coping mechanism to get
Yeah.
through a lot of things in my life. And I was just like, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to help people. This is how I want to entertain people. I don't like being in front of a camera. It's just like, it's too much for me. And I just don't feel like I'm inspired enough to hit that ground running as hard as you need to in an industry as saturated as the film industry and the television industry.
Well,
And
and it's so cutthroat.
yeah, no, and I was like, I just can't. There was several reasons I couldn't do it. And when I started listening to podcasts and then heard one that I felt like, wow, I think I could like really do that and I love that. Then that's what got me into podcasting. And then I was all sober and I was like, I should go back to school. So then I went and got my bachelor's degree in broadcast and communication arts. And
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
thank you. Yeah. So I and then from there I started the podcast and now it's coming
When
up
did you
in
start your podcast?
4 years in April.
Wow, good for you. So that
Yeah.
was COVID. COVID times
Yep,
was.
it was a COVID baby podcast for sure.
What was your inspiration? So why don't you first of all tell people a little bit about your podcast? I know I mentioned it at the beginning, but
Yeah.
you talk a lot about people who have been emotionally manipulated, which leads naturally to a lot of cults. So what
Yep.
inspired you to start this show with this format of topics? And 4 years, that's congratulations. That's great.
Thank you. And we actually hit 500,000 downloads on our 3-year anniversary almost to the day. And I'm pretty
Wow.
sure we're going to hit 1 million on our 4-year anniversary. So I'm
Congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. I mean, maybe not like right then, but around the time. I mean, hopefully, if
I mean, if it's
knock on
within,
wood, if things go according to plan.
right, if it's within a couple months or weeks, go for it.
We got this. Um, so yeah, I had always been interested in just like really diverse things that made me go, damn, that's like really fucked up. I've
Me
always
too. I think that's why I liked your show so much.
yeah, because like I mean, I do like talking. I mean, I do think it's important, and sometimes if the case is really interesting, I think it's good to cover murder, especially if it's an all especially if it's a cold case that needs
Mhm.
attention, or if it's a marginalized victim. A lot of those cases don't get as much representation, you
No,
know.
they don't.
But when I first okay, well, first of all, I've always loved documentaries. So I saw one, when I was like in my early 20s called The Imposter about this,
Yes, I
you
love
know,
that documentary.
yes,
I was just
about
talking about
Frederick
it the other
Bourdin.
day. Yeah.
It's so
That
good.
that is, I've probably watched that 5 times when I'm
Oh my
just
gosh.
like,
Yeah, I've seen it a few
and
times.
the way the tides just turn in that story, you're like, what the fuck is going on
What?
here?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on here?
And like
I highly
that's
recommend to anyone who hasn't watched that to go find that.
yeah, oh, 100%. I mean, and there is murder, but that's like not what the story is about.
No. Or
So
was
I
there a
actually
murder?
think
It's
that
like,
so often other stories that I feel like true crime gets very categorized as like it's about murder. That's
hmm
mostly what you hear about and see about when you hear about true crime. But I'm always thinking like, say cults, they have so much crime going on in them. Usually there's financial abuse, mental and emotional abuse, often spiritual abuse and sexual
physical.
abuse, physical abuse. Usually they're fucking breaking all kinds of laws. Often murder happens. Like I'm like that these
It's
things have it
wild.
all, you guys. Like
And what's
um
so crazy about cults too, just in general, is like they're everywhere. They're like right in front of us, and I
oh my
don't think
god.
we see them.
Yes. And that's why I really like the cult bingo. when I first started when I first started the podcast, I was seeing in the serial killers that we were covering and the cults that we were covering, all these through lines. I was like, man, serial killers, they're usually like white males who had a domineering mother or an absent father, or they got hit in the head, or they were a pillar of the community, or their neighbors
Hmm.
never suspected it. It was just the same themes over and over. And then the same with
They're
cults and
charismatic too. It's always
yes,
charismatic.
yes. It, if you saw the bingo, you'd be like, yeah, and you could think of 5 serial killers, even if you don't know serial killers who like fit all those. Everybody knows like Ted Bundy, Ed Kemper, and Jeffrey Dahmer, right? Like you could look at my
You know,
serial
John
killer
Wayne
bingo and
Gacy grew up. John Wayne
oh,
Gacy,
and
like
Casey.
where,
Ugh.
yeah, he's outside of Chicago, like where I grew up. He was my friend's brother is actually the lead detective on Gacy to this day. He was in that Gacy documentary on Peacock like 2 years ago
Oh my
too.
god.
Yeah.
Gacy is one of the worst dudes. Dude.
He told me, I probably shouldn't say this, but he told me a long time ago, years ago, at my friend's birthday, he told me that they believe that there's about double the Gacy murders that they've like pinned on him.
Oh my
Don't have
god.
proof, but isn't that wild?
Yeah, that
And the
is.
way he had that one victim that escaped and
Dude.
he
Ugh.
and went to the police and the police gave him back to him. Like there's just like the charisma of these people is
Okay, I
it's
knew that
like
happened with BT. I knew that happened with Jeffrey Dahmer, but I did not know that happened with him as
yeah,
well.
yeah. Well,
Oh
now
my
you've got
god.
I'm 99% sure, but yes, we'll fact check that. But
But
yeah,
yeah,
it's
if you like pulled up my bingo and it repopulates every time, which is cool too, but you could look at it for any one of those that we just talked about and you would absolutely get bingo. And then I noticed the same thing with coercive groups. And I think actually I'm trying to stay a little bit more away from the term cults because I think that a lot of things are cultish and cults really are on a scale from pretty benign and it's more of a community, but maybe is there a culty vibe? Sure, but are they hurting anybody? No. Are they hurting anybody? No. Okay. And then on the other side, we've got Jim Jones and why can't I think what the fuck? Jim Heaven's Gate, Nexium,
yeah, yeah.
like the real bad ones that everybody knows because of how brutal they were and stuff like that. Um so if you look at our cult bingo, it's like we were able to look at reality TV and say, is this a cult? And according to the cult bingo, yes, it
Pretty
was.
damn close. Yep.
Like I just pulled up one and like I said, it repopulates, but we have like leaders incarnation of Jesus or God, penalty for leaving, copy to their cult leaders, leader is all knowing. There's just so many through lines
Hmm.
in
And if you
coercive and controlling groups.
yeah, if the why am I blanking on the one that we just talked about it? Twin Flames, the Twin Flames. There's
Yes.
the Amazon Prime one and there's a Netflix one. That guy literally started looking like Jesus the further that they went on. I mean, it was just
And then
like,
he said he's Jesus. He is
yeah,
Jesus.
it's insane. Like, I gotta wonder, like, do you think, and you've researched this a lot more than me, like I barely scratched the surface. Do you think they believe it, or do you think they know they're a cult leader, or do you think it's somewhere in between, or varies?
So I think it actually really varies. Um I think a good chunk of people start something that they believe in and then the power gets to their head and it
Mm,
turns into something they didn't intend. That doesn't take any responsibility off of them or make them less of a terrible person, but I just don't think that it's always the case that somebody's like, you know what? I want to start a group so I can manipulate, control, and abuse the fuck out of people on a mass scale.
So if
I
I had
mean,
a
does
cult
that
leader,
happen? Yes, but I
if
don't
I had
think
a
that's always how it starts.
yeah, no, that makes sense. Like if I had a cult leader on here and I said, "What do you want to be when you were growing up?" I doubt anyone would be, "I wanted to lead a cult."
Well, it's really funny because wannabe rock star is one of the squares because man, that is such a common denominator in cult
The
leaders.
worship.
Wannabe rock star, wannabe fucking influencer, singer, actor, whatever. So many, Budafield, remember? Did you see that documentary on
No,
Netflix? The guy
I
was
don't think
like an
so.
ex porn star who was also like had performed in the ballet, and then
No, I hadn't
he
seen
made his
that.
fucking cult members like build a theater and start doing plays and shit. Like there's Charles Manson, like super bad, wanted to be a rock
Oh
star.
yeah, that one I know.
And that's very, very
It's because they
common.
want to be
People,
worshipped.
yes,
That's
people who
the
want to
thing.
be hero worshipped, essentially.
Same with
And then
Jesus.
and then
Jesus is
everybody's
worshipped.
like, dude, your fucking rock music sucks. And they're like, oh, okay, well, fuck you, because these five girls right here, like, they'll do anything I say. I actually am a really big stan of Leslie Van Houten, who was one of the um, Manson girls. Her story is just
Mm.
incredible. And she just got out of prison last year after 54 years. And her story is just
Oh
a
my
really
God.
insane example of how important it is for the public and people in the judicial system and everything to understand coercive control, because Leslie Van Houten would not have murdered anybody, would not have murdered anybody, would not have murdered anyone. And they actually don't even know if she did for sure. She stabbed
Mm.
an already dying or dead woman, but she would not have done that under But she wouldn't have done that if she wasn't under the coercive control of one of the most well-known and master manipulative cult leaders of our fucking time. And everybody's like,
Right.
she's a terrible person. It's like she was 19. She was under the spell of Charles Manson, who kept them fucking all hopped up on let's see, LSD and meth all the time, PS, not to mention alcohol, and they were all being sexually abused and all that shit. And for 54 years, like, they would not let her out. They overturned her parole at least 5 times.
Wow.
um and man, I hope I got to talk to her one day. But her case, also Gypsy Rose Blanchard, amazing example of coercive control and bounded choice, and how people do really extreme things that seem to other people just like insane, and how is that even an option to you, where in these situations for a lot of people, these really extreme, insane seeming options are their only options.
So then you're kind of like, well, this is like less bad than this, and then
Yeah,
you go with,
right. Yeah, and I think, um I grew up with an alcoholic, narcissistic parent, and relationships with narcissistic abusers are often referred to as one-on-one cults, because
mm,
it's a very similar power dynamic. And then I was in AA for a few years, and I've also just been very recently unpacking actually how culty that was. um and how
AA.
so much of it was, yeah, very um, Christian oriented with the language, very patriarchal, very kind of, you're either in or out.
Hmm.
I've been kind of
Well, and
going
then
down
isn't
a,
that like with the sponsor too, right? You have to like
yeah.
have a sponsor that you look up to that kind of has a little bit of, I mean, you know better than me. I've
They can
just,
only a sponsor. The only requirement is that they have one more day sober than you. So you're
right,
like
okay.
running your every life decision past me, past Nick, who has one more day sober than me.
I'm a year, yeah, like I'm a year older than you. So it's
Like, but
should I be giving you any kind of life advice
oh,
or
and I mean, I
any?
had sponsors who were younger than me, but
Wow.
like who were better at being sober, because I was not. I struggled to I really struggled to get there. Luckily now I'm like terrified of alcohol. I'm like, girl, you know where that leads. It's not good. Um, I'm what they
Well,
would
that's
call.
good. That's something you should really be proud of.
Thank you. I'm what they would call California sober, because I do partake in the marijuana. That doesn't affect my life in a negative and
Right.
detrimental way. Um,
I
so
talked to my therapist about this not that long ago. Um, I I was just talking with her. I'm like, like, what's alcoholism versus like habitual drinker versus, an addict who, wouldn't be able to do marijuana because it would, fuck up their life, like to your point.
mhm.
And the way she put it, I hope she's not mad at me for saying. No one knows who she is, but she was like, if somebody is a functioning alcoholic and or addict, and their addiction isn't disrupting their life or their relationships or their success at work or sending them, down this path, she's like, I don't really think there should be a problem with it. If it's not ruining your life, whether it's marijuana, whether it's alcohol, whether it's some other
Ice
hard
cream.
drug or ice, well, seriously, how many people drink, sodas every day, or I'm
Right.
a caffeine addict for sure.
Oh,
So it's like,
God.
but
Yeah.
it disrupts my morning sometimes if I don't have enough coffee, where I'm like, oh God, everything's got to stop because I have to go get coffee.
But
But like,
your relationship with your family isn't ruined because of that.
right, or my job isn't
Yeah.
well, maybe my job is impacted actually if I don't
Um,
have enough caffeine, but
yeah, so actually I asked my therapist once, I was like, is it terrible that I watch so much TV and do so much of my socializing online and eat so so much Haagen-Dazs? And she was like, until those become maladaptive, like those are coping mechanisms of yours, and until those become problematic, like you said, in your
mm,
relationships, in your career, in your goals or whatever, then that's fine. She was like, some
yeah,
people want to play fucking video games 14 hours a day. And if that's where they want to be, like in that alternate reality, and they still fucking, their relationships and their job and everything, like you said, if
yeah,
that's doing okay, then it's really because life is fucked, as we know. It's super hard. And people
so
who don't
fucked
have
up.
some kind of vice, I'm like, what do you like, how?
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
I I fucking love Haagen-Dazs. I love coffee. I enjoy the marijuana. Like I have to have some shit to take the edge
Edge
off.
off,
And if
yeah.
some people, for them, if that's alcohol and it's not ruining their life in any capacity, like it's not great to be an alcoholic because it's really really bad for your
Your
body.
body, yeah.
um but yeah, I think you're super right in whether your habits are adaptive or maladaptive. If they're ruining your shit, it's not good. But I mean,
Hmm.
if you're fine, then fucking like do
And that's
you.
why, yeah, because the way this kind of came up was we were talking about like dry January, right? And maybe dry January should just be high January, but
Yeah. No, it doesn't have to
but
be all or nothing, which in
well, that's
AA
the
it does, and that's why I
I
left.
know. I actually that's so interesting about the AA stuff because I had kind of heard some of that, and it came this something else that came up in therapy with something else in my life about A because I asked, I'm like, you know, do you recommend people to go to AA? Because I don't hear anyone really talk about it anymore that has, struggles with their drinking. And it's interesting because I feel like alcohol is so a part of everything we do. I don't know what it's like. Here in Chicago, there's bars at the grocery store. Like Whole Foods has $3
Wow.
mimosas on Sundays.
Bitch, shut
Okay.
up. I love
Yeah.
Whole Foods, but because of their
Yeah.
pizza. And I mean,
Um,
actually I just like I don't know. It's too expensive there. I get it. I hate Jeff Bezos. It's bougie, but
I
like don't
know.
you just feel good when you walk into Whole Foods?
You know
So
what's
just a
so
part of
funny
me is just
is
like,
I feel like I'm
ah,
being healthy. Like, forget the fact I got all this fried food in there and like you
you're
just
like, yeah, I
feel
am.
healthier. I had two mimosas while I'm walking around.
Yeah, there was orange juice. It was great. Yeah.
But yeah, it's such a big part of everything that we do in our culture.
Well, people will
It's,
like look down on you or think you're weird if you're not having a drink.
I
Although I feel like
know.
that's a lot less now. And maybe that's because I'm an adult who socializes with other adults for the most part. And who the fuck is in their late 30s or 40s going, why aren't you having a beer? Like, that'd be weird. And I'd be like, get out of my house, you know?
I'm guilty of pushing shots on people if it's a little
Ah,
late, and
well, I
but
don't think you would
but I
do that
wouldn't.
to me, Nick,
No,
because you
no, no,
know
no,
I
no, no,
don't
no. I would
drink,
not.
right?
I would not.
Yeah.
But you know
So,
what? You know what though about that is also there's like non-alcoholic options now almost everywhere you go here.
oh
Like there's
yeah.
a whole
I
menu.
I love a mocktail, okay? Like I
Oh
still
yeah.
like to feel fancy. Like muddle some mint for me or something, motherfucker. I don't want just a Coke, you know?
You can, yeah, get yourself a Virgin Captain and Coke every now and
Or
then.
I get well see, okay, actually I have pretty strong feelings on that. I think that's really dangerous. The like the fake alcohol. I think that's a really slippery slope.
Well, I
Like
was
having
joking
like
because a Captain and Coke Virgin is just a Coke.
oh,
But
I didn't hear the
that was
virgin
some
part. But did you
gentle
know that they
comedy.
make non-alcoholic alcohol?
Yeah,
So
I
like
do.
it tastes like gin, but it doesn't give you a buzz, or it
Yeah.
looks like wine, but it's non-alcoholic and it relaxes you. And I'm like, dude, as an alcoholic, that's a very slippery slope. That's very different than me having something that looks like a mojito but tastes like a minty Sprite. You know, like
Right,
different
right. It is
different
interesting too,
feels.
and I have a friend that drinks some of the non-alcoholic stuff now because he doesn't drink anymore. But it is weird because I've heard that it really tastes awful unless it's mixed in like a mocktail. Like on its own,
Yeah,
it
so
just
why
tastes
would
awful.
you because yeah, cuz alcohol tastes awful. So it's like, yeah, it's weird to me that somebody would have like a fake gin and tonic. I'm like, that is just
Just
that's
have a
like playing
tonic.
beer pong with water instead. Like it's you're still like acting like an alcoholic. You're just not getting like the awesome effect of getting drunk
Yeah,
or the
which is like the
terrible effect
point.
of getting this the terrible the hangover. That's luckily my body is like not it's pretty sensitive and the longer I was drinking in my 30s, the like because I relapsed for like about a year where I just went off the rails.
What happened, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh no, that's okay. So it's when I was living in San Francisco and I I had a couple years sober and I moved up there to go to school and I went one day and I hung out with a group of my friends on like a grassy knoll in a park by my house, and they were all drinking. And I was fully sober at that point. Like,
How long have you been
no,
sober?
nothing. Probably 2 years, I think, about
Okay,
two
it's a
years.
significant amount of time.
And I actually consider my sobriety now differently because, like, over 9 years, I had that 1 year long stint. And then I had maybe two or three other slip ups where I drank for like a day or I had a cocktail or something. But in AA, that would make you start your clock again. And I'm like,
I
y'all can
know.
go fuck yourselves because I've been mostly alcohol free for like the absolute majority of 9 years. So
Yeah,
I'm not throwing that away because I had what I call a lapse because I think the whole like relapse and then like shaming process is um
terrible.
shamey.
Mhm.
That's what I think. And actually, so that's what um and some fucking bitch came on to a live one day where I was talking about AA. And it's really funny because it's like if you can't hear criticism about the group that you're in a fucking cult and you're being a culty cunt. And sorry, can I say cunt on your show? Um
Sure.
I say it a lot on mine.
I
I
say I
like
say it's not
podcasting's the
suitable for children.
wild west. I
Oh,
love
it
it.
is.
YouTube is very censored, but podcasting, it's like shitty fuck tits, you know?
Yeah,
Okay,
it
sorry.
is.
Um,
Well, YouTube, I think you're okay if you mark it the right way. Say it's not for kids, and then you don't swear in like the first 30 seconds.
yeah, or 4 minutes. I don't know.
Something
I
like.
don't
Is
know
it
the
four
rules.
minutes?
It's confusing. I don't
Ugh.
know, honestly. I
Freedom of
that's a whole
speech
other
is
conversation
somebody
about
that we used to know.
wait, I love that song.
It's a
Um,
classic.
what was I? Sorry, where?
So you had that woman
Oh,
who
oh, so
was.
I went and hung out with my friends in the sun all day. And then right when I got home, I got incredibly sick. I had gotten heat stroke. So I
Mm,
was like throwing up really hardcore. And I actually started smoking weed when I was 16. Well, I started smoking weed when I was like 13 like because whatever.
yeah, I mean, why
Because
not?
I started young. And but when I was 16 I got panic disorder, and I would wake up really early in the morning and be super duper nauseous and
Mm,
sometimes throw up repeatedly.
oh,
um and I found that marijuana was very, very effective for nausea. So um I'm, I'm violently ill. And I live in San Francisco, and my roommates had some weed, and I was like, well, I know what will stop me from throwing up and put me to sleep. So I smoked some weed, and then I went to a meeting, and they were like, you relapsed. And I was like, no, I didn't. And they were like,
for
yeah, you
smoking
did.
weed?
Mm-hmm. And people were
Oh,
insisting to me that I had relapsed. And then I was like, well, fuck you. If you guys are going to say that I relapsed, then I am going to relapse. And then and I'm not,
oh
and like,
no.
I'm not,
I
and
totally get that though. I think
this is
that's.
where this person came in. And I said, so then I was like, well, fuck that. I am going to relapse. And I went out and I started drinking again, like
Mm,
hardcore. And, this girl in the chat was like, so it sounds like you're blaming the group because you went out. And I was like, so it sounds like you're in a cult and you should get the fuck out of the chat right now. Actually, I
jeez.
did go off because I was like, stop it. um, because I made a lot of really, really excellent points as to how AA is very culty and often like not in a good way. Although I did say that for the first couple years, like it totally saved my life. And I think I
Yeah.
really did need that level of control because like I could not stay sober to save my fucking life.
Mm. Well, you should be
And
really proud of yourself
thank
for
you. Yeah.
not ending up like, spiraling
Oh, oh God.
consistently.
Yeah. I hit a lot of bottoms. And honestly, I'm like, I'm lucky that I'm alive. Like I was that kind of
Mm.
drinker. But yeah, so I'm definitely very happy about where I am with that now. But yeah, I mean, in San Francisco, AA had kind of been my support system, and my uncle in AA too. And then when I quote went out and wasn't working the program, he stopped talking to me too, because that's the thing about AA. It's like you're either in or out. You're either in or
That's
out,
so
and
culty.
you're
That's
either
so
working a
culty.
program or you're not. And the program works if you work it, Nick. So if you're if the program's not working, it's because you're not working it hard enough or correctly. It's
That's
your fault.
so. It's
Yeah.
always your fault.
Mhm. Mhm.
Wow.
Very fucking shamey and shit. So, yeah, I realized that I had been in a one-on-one cult with one of my parents. I had been in AA, which had been pretty culty. And then I also recently kind of realized when I was doing some research into the troubled teen industry, I was watching a documentary on Netflix called Hell Camp that came out in December of
I was
last
gonna
year.
say that just came out. I have that bookmarked.
Oh my God, yeah,
Uh,
so you should definitely watch it. I feel like I feel like they focus a little bit too much on the man who kind of started the
okay.
wilderness therapy programs, but something that these programs really emphasize, like the troubled teen industry is all about breaking children into knowing the fact that they're not good enough, and they might not ever be good enough to go back home or to receive love from their parents, and they better just work
Jesus.
real fucking hard. And I some like the thing that I work on the most to this day in therapy is this like deep seated belief that I'm not good enough, because if you're mistreated as a child, it's way too scary for you to believe that there's something wrong with your parents, because that would mean that there's something wrong with God. And that's too scary for a kid to wrap their mind around. So they internalize it and think, well, there must be something wrong with me. That's why I'm not getting my needs met. So I've had this like deep on the outside, logically, I'm like, you kill, girl. Like, you kick ass. You're awesome. But deep down, I don't
In there.
believe that. I'm like, no, you're fucking defective, and there's something wrong with you that you can like never fix. But that's why we go to therapy every week, and we
Yeah.
just keep going, Nick, and we just keep going.
You just keep powering through. I had today's episode actually of my podcast. What we talked a lot about the deep-seated feeling of I'm not enough. She's a neurocycle facilitator from Dr. Carolina Leaf's program, and
Are you saying that I'm not alone in that belief?
no,
I
no,
know, I
it's like
know.
it's funny because like I actually have artwork on my wall so that when I get up in the morning, that one of the first things I see is a painting that says I am enough.
I
And I
love
bought this,
that.
yeah, I bought this from an artist in Detroit in 2020, just selling it on the lake. I was gonna say river walk, like lake walk. And it is that thing because it inside of me, I have this thing. It's manifests a lot as imposter syndrome, and it manifests
Mm-hmm.
in many different ways, but it is this like I'm not enough to be loved. I'm not good enough for this. I'm not good enough for that. And I have to like consciously remind myself that that's not true.
Like, stop and challenge those
Yeah.
thoughts. Yeah,
And I think
no,
part of it
fully.
was like I grew up Catholic, so you're
Oh,
just constantly
yeah,
doing
that'll
everything wrong.
give you a
Yeah.
complex, huh?
Speaking of culty,
You're born well, you're born a sinner, right? Like,
yeah,
you're
you're born
fucked right
out
out
of
of the
sin.
gate.
Yeah, you're
It's like,
born
man,
out
I
of
didn't
sin.
even have a chance.
I'm like, the second you're on Earth, you're already like on a path to
Uh
purgatory.
no, and it's funny because like it's like a very open thing that
Yeah,
Catholicism is very much about guilt. It's like the guilt religion.
100%.
It's like, why is
Catholic
that?
guilt.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Like, guilt and shame are not good things that we should just be instilling into children and humans. It doesn't it doesn't work out great.
No, it really does create this sort of that feeling. It really is like that I am not enough, that
Well,
feeling. And it's like I'm doing something wrong all the
yeah.
time, no matter what.
I think that a lot of my, more so in the past now, like I said, just working every week in therapy, trying to get better at, which I think like it shouldn't just be a me thing because I'm super fucked up. Like, I think people should always be working on learning about themselves and learning about the
Agreed.
world and becoming better people. And if you ever come to a point where you're like, you know what, I know enough and I'm fucking like, I don't have any growing that I have left to do, unless you're on your deathbed, I would challenge that.
No, I agree completely. I say we're works in progress until the moment we die.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully, right? If you stay humble and know that like it's like this hard balance of knowing that you're enough and that you can always be a
Get
better
better.
version of yourself. That's totally enough, right?
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of my lashing out at people, which has been kind of like oh, whatever, a little bit of a common theme in my life, comes from I will fuck you off before you hurt me,
Hmm.
because man, people are sneaky snakes. They'll just come out of nowhere. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm so cool," do 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 do, and then bam, and you're like,
Yep.
"Where?" And I'm not like that. Like, I can definitely be a bitch. Like, I can hardcore be super not cool. I know that about me. Um, but like, I don't do fucked up stuff to other people. Like, I
Yeah.
don't steal from people and like lie to them and manipulate. And so it's like people just blow me away with the shit that they pull.
Same here.
And that's why I stopped working with people. Also, I was just like, I just need to listen to podcasts and like fucking vacuum and shit, because I can't
I, you know,
handle dealing with people's like stuff, because we all have our stuff, right? And that's
yep.
like what kind of shapes us often. And if somebody's like, I don't have stuff, then you're a liar.
Hmm.
Um,
It's like people are like, I don't have mental health challenges. Yes, you do. Like we all do. It's impossible to not. Like you may have some done some healing or not have as much to heal from or have better control or be able to respond instead of react. But like you
mhm.
mean to tell me there's not going to be days you don't get angry or there's not going to be days like you don't have a bad thought in your head. Like it's just maybe, I don't know. Maybe it just seems so foreign to like
Oh, I
you and
think,
I that
well, yeah, because we talk about mental health so openly. And I think,
which,
unfortunately,
by the way, was a work in pro. Like it's still hard for me to talk about.
for
It's
some
still very
reason,
hard.
it's not for me. And I don't, I think it's because I've gotten so much positive feedback from my listeners. Like, hey, thank you for being open about
Mm,
your mental health struggles because it makes me feel that I'm not alone or that I'm not weird. Thanks for mentioning the kind of therapy that you do. I'm going to look into EMDR because I also have
yeah.
trauma. EMDR is eye movement
Hmm.
reprocessing and desensitization. If anybody's like, what? It's really good if you have complex trauma. So like I like to share it and like watch knock on wood, that nobody doesn't just troll the fuck out of me now. Cause I mean I have people I've definitely had people go for the jugular. Like
Oh
they
yeah.
know what hurts and they go for that. But I think overwhelmingly the response has been people glad and like I and that's why I really liked My Favorite Murder, because when they would say, oh, I'm really fucking anxious today, or I just into a conflict with my mom and like I'm feeling pretty depressed about it, and they would be open about this shit, and I was like, that is so fucking cool. I'm feeling really anxious today too. I also feel depressed. And Karen in particular would be very open about her sobriety and the fact that she was doing all kinds of speed back in the 80s,
Jeez.
and as somebody who has dabbled in many of the colors of the rainbow of drugs out there, luckily never touched like the H bomb or PCP or anything like
Right.
that.
Jeez.
Woo! But I went pretty hard, and it was so good to hear somebody talk about this stuff and in a humorous way and in a vulnerable way that I could, as somebody who would probably never ever meet these people, really fucking relate and feel like I was talking to a friend who understood me.
Yeah.
That's something also really that's also something that really inspired me to be a podcaster, was these parasocial relationships. Is like
Hmm.
I would feel such a kinship with these podcasters that I listened to. I'd be like, oh, Georgia, oh, Maddie. It's like you feel like you're when people have that sort of vibe, it's like you feel like
Yeah.
you're hanging out with a friend. So I just want people to know that if they are an addict or they have been to rehab or jail or a mental health institution, yes, I've been to all three. Or if you have complex trauma or you've been sexually assaulted or you have anxiety, like that's all okay. And
It
it's
is.
so fucked up, but it's pretty fucking normal. And if none of the above is something that you can personally relate to, I mean, you probably know somebody who
Yeah.
is an addict or who
Oh
you'd be
yeah.
you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who didn't have like a first or second degree connection with
Yep.
one of those things.
I completely
So
agree.
I guess I've been lucky with the feedback, and that's what's made me continue to like want to be open. And then I'm also just like careful about what I'm vulnerable about now. Like
Yeah.
I was more open than I wanted to be maybe once about a sexual assault experience on YouTube. And people can be really fucking mean there, and it's sometimes live and learn. I said, I'm going to be more selective about when I share certain
Right.
parts of my story, because like I don't owe shit to anybody,
You
but I
don't.
do like to share what I'm comfortable with sharing, knowing that other people can connect with that.
I think that's amazing. And I do think that's what's so cool. about the internet and podcasting or whatever the community, not cult, community that you
Yeah.
build, you know, it can be incredibly supportive, and it can be this place where you actually, you know, there's, for all that's said, and I say it myself, about the internet and social media making us more lonely, at the same time, there are parts of it that bring people together. Like, you and I would have never met without social media. I
No.
can say that about a ton of people.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is when you do have that community, or that kula, as my yoga instructor calls it, you have that group. It's really connecting. It's a connective tissue
Yeah.
to be vulnerable and be relatable. And you
And you
know,
need to join my Discord because of that, because we
yes,
literally have a channel called Mental Health Support where you can just go and be like, I'm having a rough day. And
that's
people, like
awesome.
strangers, will just be nice to you. It's
Yeah,
crazy. My Discord's
that's
wild.
amazing.
You guys got to join it.
I'm gonna join
TSFU,
it.
the podcast.com, and then click play with us, and it'll take you to the Discord. That's the easiest way.
Awesome. And we will put that link down below. So my therapy appointment's supposed to start at
Yeah, yeah,
6.
yeah. I also
So,
am going to get ready for
and
a
you've got to get ready for your
concert.
concert. But before we go, I always
Yes.
like to give my guests. I
I
always like to
guess.
give my guests an opportunity to ask me a question. Now, you interviewed me a couple weeks ago for like 2 hours, so I can give you a pass if you want, or I can give you an opportunity to ask me anything before we wrap up today.
What is like your what are a few of the things that you do regularly to like chill? I tagged you the other day in my incredible video of
I
a bubble
saw
bath.
that.
Um, you guys, like, I get the candles, the exfoliating gloves, the fucking Epsom salt bubble bath. Like, I get it on and popping in the bathtub. And I even had ice cream in there. I had ice cream
Haagen-Dazs.
in the bathroom. Okay, that sounds gross. I did. But I ate Haagen-Dazs in the bathtub while I was having a bubble bath the other day, and you guys, like, 10 out of 10 recommend. It was the shit.
Oh man, we highly endorse that.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
one of
really
my
like ice
faves.
cream. I don't
You
really like ice cream. I know. Once or twice a year in the summer,
Ooh,
I'll crave it.
once
Yeah.
or I eat ice cream like once or twice a day. No, I have it 2 to 5 times a week.
Good for you. Hey, do you? No judgment. You know what? I have a burger and pizza every week. So,
Hey, yeah, it's remember, if it's not maladaptive, like, listen, no,
right.
none of my relationships
I
are
don't know what
fucked up
my
because of my ice
heart
cream
thinks about all
intake.
of it. True.
Like, everybody's cool with it.
Yeah, I would say like, so there's two things that are really important to like my self-care. And one of them is walking, like just movement. Like I will take a call and I'll literally just pace my condo.
Uh-huh.
And especially now, it's actually like this. I've really been struggling the last few days mentally because it's so cold in Chicago, and the cold
Mhm.
doesn't bother me. Like if it's like 30, I'll bundle up and still go on walks. But being outside, it's not even necessarily like nature because I'm in Chicago, right? Being outside and walking is just the most important thing I think I do for my mental
And on Love
health,
is Blind, they were like, "No walking for you,
more or
Nick."
less, more or less.
Dude, yeah,
And
it's crazy.
I did get in trouble one time for going on a walk that was too long, and we were only supposed to go for 45 minutes, and it was longer. But
That was such a cult. So
so
culty.
crazy.
So
And
coercive.
I've been struggling. First of all, it's post-holiday hangover, right? Like you're
Mhm.
just like shook, and then it's dark all the time. And when it's
Ugh,
not dark, it's
yeah.
so cold. It's like negative 20, 30 degrees the last few days. So I haven't even been able to get
Whoa.
outside.
I think the
Yeah.
lowest it's got here is like -10.
Wow.
But
So ours is
I went
about
on a
that, but
walk
in
today because I
chill.
was like, oh, it's 20.
I
Like,
know. Hey, it's gonna be 17 tomorrow. I'm like,
you're
yes.
like, I'm putting my shorts on. I'm getting out there. Yeah, no, I took a walk today actually
Good for you.
because I used to just really like power through every day, like just the whole day, just like
Hmm.
head down. And then I realized that
It's
taking
not
breaks
healthy.
is really cool.
Yeah.
So I took like an hour break in the middle of my day to take a walk and have a coffee. And I was supposed to stare off social media, but I was like, oh, this would be such a good post, though. The mountains are so beautiful. Content. And I heard you talking about this on your interview, I think from last week, right?
Yeah.
That it's like with social media, it's like producing constantly, right? And I'm like, oh, what a beautiful walk. Oh, but this would also be like really sick content because I could talk about the fact that I'm listening to Nick, and I could do a poll, and those are good for engagement. It's like, or you could just fucking walk.
Go on a walk. You could just go on a walk and listen to a podcast. Yeah.
But I didn't. Instead, I did the post. But and then I walked. I posted, and then I said, okay, now we're walking. But
yeah.
So you love walking. That's one of your faves.
Yeah, I love walking. It's so important. Getting sunlight in the morning too, in the evening, very good for your mental health because it helps regulate the chemicals in your body and all your circadian rhythm. It's also important, and it really makes a difference. And like the last couple days, like I get seasonal affective disorder, seasonal depression, whatever you want to call it, pretty badly, especially like after Thanksgiving till pretty much March. And it's the hardest time of the year for me, I would say. And then on top of that, the last week of, not being able to get outside, it's been brutal.
I was gonna go outside the other day, and my boyfriend was like, it's 0 degrees, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh. And then I decided not to do that.
Yep.
Also, isn't Chicago the windy city?
Yes, but little known fact.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It's not because it's windy. It got that nickname because of the politicians just blowing wind in like the 1920s. That's actually what it is. Yeah, it's not. It does. We get windy sometimes, but it's not. That's not why it's called the Windy City. It's because the politicians were always puffing wind.
I was today years old when I learned that the Windy City of Chicago is not called that because of the weather. Wow, that's a fact. I'm going to tell people. I'm going to tell people, Nick. I don't think they know.
There's some new social media content for you.
No, I was like, I have to tell the people immediately. That's my thought, right? Tell the people, Ashley. I know you have to go to your therapy.
Yes.
Let me not snap while I talk. I know you have to go to your therapy appointment. So yeah, you guys, my podcast, That's So Fucked Up, is available anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you go to tsfuthepodcast.com, that's where you can find a bunch of our listening platforms, all of our social media, our cult bingo, like Nick and I were talking about, links to our Patreon. You can join our Discord, all that good stuff. tsfuthepodcast.com.
And those links are all in the show description. So go click support, give it a listen, and I have a feeling we'll be doing something more soon together.
Yes, definitely. So, maybe a Halloween watch party, the movie, not the holiday. We'll see.
It's a possibility, but if we do the watch party, it might be all the way through the holiday. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Nick. And
my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to me, Nick's listeners.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.